form, that is what will happen to you in your experience. That's what you will create. And that's what I teach in my work.
There's a book I came across last year. It's called The Holographic Universe, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, but for those that aren't, it was written by Michael Talbot in 1991, and it gets into that very, very specific area, the idea that this whole matrix reality is holographic. We're holographic. These things happening around us, this table is holographic, but it's engineered by thought, by consciousness. That's the beauty of the age that we live in, Stuart, is that there's all this scientific backing. Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief, there's all this information about how thought at its root level affects matter, our physical bodies, our reality, our world.
That's correct. You know, you are what you think literally. And if you look at how DNA is created, I always tell a flow chart of how thoughts are electromagnetic. When electromagnetic energy enters into physical reality, it attracts the atomic structure that's free-floating in that physical reality, and then it forms around the electromagnetic thoughts so that it creates protein bases, and that becomes the foundation of your DNA, and that's the blueprint for your body. So what you think is what you become. In addition, you also project out your thoughts and reflect back experiences. So really, being a policeman or a monitor of your own thoughts and what you feel is the key to creating the life that you want.
Because it has an effect on others, of course. In your book, The True Reality of Sexuality, let's get into the basic overview of what you get into that book as well, because certainly a lot of people think of sex as just simply a pleasurable act where there's an orgasm and a climax, instead of the reality of the situation where it's a sharing of energy and information. And of course, if certain people have certain entities around them, that energy could pass over to the other person. So I see in our modern reality, and I'm not coming at it from a prude perspective, but there's this warped, sexual, vile stuff that's so pervasive throughout our world. So what is the purpose of that, and where should we as individuals choose to take our energy instead?
Sexual energy is the most powerful energy physically and energetically on the earth. We have to remember that the sensation of orgasm is actually a recreation of the outburst of God mind when it first thought of creation. That's why we constantly have a feeling or a need to enter into sexual activity, because we're constantly recreating the universal creation from God mind. So when we have that understanding, then everything we do creatively is really a holy event. Everything that we think, everything that we want to manifest is spiritual. And so it's very important that we create from a very pure perspective. It's not about procreation. It's about reenacting all of creation from the God mind. And ancient ritual, the ancient civilizations knew about that, and they performed fertility rituals for agriculture, for weather, etc., in a pure form. Unfortunately, the Illuminati have taken that sexual ritual and perverted it into one for control and manipulation of mankind. So we need to undo that, deprogram ourselves, and learn the right way to use this energy.
And so if we're living in a society where we're constantly thinking about sex all the time, we're stuck basically in the lower chakra areas. We're basically stuck down at the bottom, and we're not evolving if we're not moving beyond lust, basically.
That's correct, and we have to remember that all sexual activity is of a mental nature and really not physical.
That's very interesting. So all of your books are available at Amazon, and of course expansions.com is your website. Do you get into meditation techniques and things like that, I'm sure, as well over there?
Every kind of mental exercise you can think of, we teach you how to do it.
Well, Stuart, I want to thank you for coming on short notice, and I apologize for the technical difficulties that we had, but I'm glad to have you on and share your information with the audience.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Stuart, and I'll get this video to you shortly. Thank you for coming on. And for those that are listening now, we'll take a couple phone calls at 503-288-4442, where we might only have time for about one or two phone calls. But what we're talking about tonight is another look beyond the five sense reality at what's going on with our species, historically, what happened in the past, and looking at how we got to where we are today. A reality where we're not utilizing the free energy that exists in this realm. We're raping the planet for resources that are not renewable, but it's all by design to keep us dependent on the controllers. In particular, their representatives, their human representatives, the human hosts that in fact might be working for other entities, other beings that we in fact know very little about. But in the last 10 years, we have more information than we've ever had, not only on the reptilians and things of that nature or theories about it, but on the idea of consciousness recreating our reality. I look at Portland. I have a lot of love for this city. I can see how things can be better. Despite my criticisms, despite the things that I point out, it's all done out of love because I believe it can be done better, that we can literally live our lives more mindfully and use the resources that we have in a more mindful way, instead of a wasteful way. You look at the houses that we live in. They're all square. You don't see squares in nature. In nature, you see sacred geometry, you see tetrahedrons, you see other forms of geometry. You don't see squares. We live in squares. We have square little boxes that we live in. We go to the grocery store and we create a little square. There's your food, there's my food. We're completely out of balance with the way that we ought to be, the way that we ought to be living, and we know this. And we're trying to restore ourselves to a more mindful way of living. Instead of a toxic, parasitic man fight woman, woman fight man reality that's not bringing us happiness. The physical things in this world don't bring us happiness, and they'll bring us even less happiness tomorrow if we're still stuck on those crutches. That includes drugs and alcohol. One day, the physical stuff, the external stuff, just no longer seems to work for us. And the louder voice that we hear is not the mainstream media, but our own inner psyche, our higher self that's prodding us, urging us to look towards the real light, not the false light, the black sun, the dark reality, the Eye of Sauron, the Panopticon, the God that they want us to believe in, the beast system. No, we want to align ourselves with the light without fighting with others over religion. We want to align ourselves with the light without fighting fellow brothers and sisters for peanuts, for dollars, for land. We don't want to involve ourselves with the mistakes that our other peers are making. So if there's a situation that you're in your life and you're trying to change your world, change your reality, sometimes in life you have to change your environment. You have to change yourself. You've got to change your very company to take your energy somewhere higher. In many cases, we're affected by our environment, so we have to invoke the power of our own thoughts to protect ourselves from influence. Because to me, that is a superpower. There's walking on water, there's flying through the air. Then there's having a consciousness that cannot be polluted. A consciousness that's powerful, that has the ability, the knowledge, the wisdom to affect its reality, to take its energy to a higher level. To protect one's mind from external influence, to protect one's mind, one's consciousness from mind control. We know what the 9/11 attacks have done to our country and have done to our world. It was a global ritual done to create the most amount of fear on one day that, of course, they are still using today in their preparations for future wars, not just the current wars that are going on in Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan and elsewhere in this global so-called war on terror. They want more bloodshed, and they want you involved in the events that are about to unfold. It's spiritual warfare. When you look at all this stuff, these draconian big brother measures that are being introduced to our planet, it's about trying to take away free will from us, trying to take away our own choice, our own path, our own journey towards happiness. They want to remove that in this game of spiritual warfare. So you have to align yourself with the light, not any other false gods out there or messiahs or people out there that would love to take your money and be your leader. So I'm not one of those individuals. I bring to the table here different information I think that I ought to be looking at in my life, that you ought to be looking at in your life, and to do it in a way where people are able to take the information that they want and leave the rest, to do it without an agenda, because it's the right thing to do. It may be controversial. Some people might call stuff a conspiracy theory. Don't pay attention to other people's labels. because they're doing that, because they're trying to keep us all down and keep us in a box to where we don't question our own reality and we don't truly try to change our own lives. We just kind of go along to get along so they don't feel guilty themselves about staying stuck. We're not here to be stuck. We're not here to lay around, to sit around, to drink a bunch of booze, to eat a bunch of cotton candy, to sit around on the couch while our bellies get bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean that literally and metaphorically. We're here to evolve. We're here to progress. And this is what I believe to be humanity's destiny, the soul's destiny. Collectively, we chose to come here, I believe, to this planet called Earth to experience a sequences of events based on how we relate to those events that'll dictate the soul's next journey from here on out.